Hey guys, you're listening to the Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast, where we talk about uncaging your divinely gifted wild heart to be as free and expansive as you were born to be. My goal is to use our stories, guest interviews, and your questions to tease out what has been keeping your wild heart under wraps. I'm your host, Mielle Fox, and together we will shatter the myths of our old stories to set our wild heart free. So thanks for choosing you and showing up today. All righty. Welcome back, everybody. Another new episode of Energy the Untamed Heart. I'm very excited to have a long-term acquaintance and friend, Katie Behner, visit with me today. She is the founder and creator of Precision Pointe Coaching. She has a list of certifications all in the direction of mindfulness, meditation, blending how we move our bodies and sort through how our mind connects so that we can reach a place of better peace, ease, and flow, which, you know, my jam. It's all about how do we walk home to the heart. And it's really interesting. Before we hit record, Katie and I were just chatting about how interesting it is that when one shows up in a certain line of work or career or purpose, sometimes we don't get to be just us, just us. So that was really an interesting sort of segue into what are we going to talk about a little bit today. So Katie has opened up her morning. We won't be here all morning, but we're going to have a little chat about what's going on and what really motivates her to do the things that she does and how she shows up for her clients. There's just so much here. I can't wait to share this with you. So Katie, welcome. Good morning. Welcome to the Energy the Untamed Heart podcast. So excited to have you.
Thank you, Mielle. Yes, thank you so much for inviting me in on this conversation. And I don't know, were you sure we're not going to be here all morning? Because we have an awful lot to talk about. You never know.
You never know. Yeah, so it's really good. So I think I met you, I'm going to say probably almost
Yeah, I
10
think
years ago.
yep, at
And you were
least. Yep.
offering some yoga classes for a few of us gals that got together at an off the grid location in the state that I live in Vermont. And
Uh-huh.
I remember the first thing that struck me was the radiant energy that just emits off your being. And I thought, whoa, this chick's really tuned in, like really in the flow.
Mm.
And that wasn't just energetic in the flow. I watched you literally do yoga on a paddleboard almost, and I was like, whoa, she's not just in the flow energetically, but she's in the flow physically, you know, with her breathing. There's no way you could do the things that I saw you do if you were not. So that's how we
Oh,
met. That's how it started. And since then, I've sort of followed your journey as you've kind of morphed, reiterated, grown, transformed, all the things to where you are now, which is phenomenal as you show up as a breathing and life coach, as a precision performance coach, as a meditation and mindfulness mentor. So I'm just fill in the blanks. Like what
yeah,
it's easy enough to follow the trajectory and data points of what you've done, but what I
yeah.
really am nosy and curious about is how have you, Katie, found
Mm.
yourself moving through these changes and how has it shifted the way you want to show up for yourself and for the
Ah,
collective?
well, Mielle, that is an amazing question. And yes, I remember that yoga retreat very well. And it's just wonderful to hear, it's all about our own perspective, right? We can all look at the same thing and have 100 different ideas of where we're coming from and how it looks. So it's always exciting to sit down with somebody that, I know we met like a decade ago, and a decade ago, I was who I am today in some ways, but the last decade, this last 10 years has been wild. And it's been a decade of deep, deep self awareness, deep self understanding, deep healing, deep courage, and willingness to keep going, regardless of the twists and turns of life that is in front of us constantly. And I can say now, looking back, 10, 11 years ago when I decided to start my own business and run after the person that I am. And I'm really becoming more acquainted with her with each breath. To be honest, we become more acquainted with who we are. If we can create that space for awareness to be, pregnant and present with us at all times. That looking back, it's so fun if you take things, I like to break things down. If you take back the last decade and, the things that didn't always make sense in the moment make so much sense when you can look back. And it's just fascinating where I'm like, oh, I get it now, right? It might take 10 years to look back and be like, that's why that happened 10 years ago. And something very important happened about 8 to 9 years ago when I sold my mare. I sold my Lily and focused my horse, focused mainly on the body, on the human body, on learning about the biomechanics of the body, the biomechanics of the breath, and just jumped into the deep end in teaching as much. At the time, it was a lot of yoga, and then I got certified in Barre. And Barre is a postural, low impact, amazing workout that I honestly, Meow, can't help doing life unless it's intentional. I set intentions all the time. And my intention for that was to just be, I was the first barre instructor in Concord. I was running this brand new studio. I had not one client. I had no money. I had no idea what I was doing and just ran at it as hard as I could from a place of like, I'm going to be as authentic as I can. And so through that process, I found the most success where at the end of the day, as I was rebuilding my life from a divorce, moved out of my marital home, single mom, raising my kids and figuring out how to figure this out was that the more authentic I could be, the more clear minded I could be, and the deeper I believed in my dreams and the deeper I believed they were already coming true, the more fun I had and the happier I was. And the feedback that I got from my clients mirrored as we were speaking before we started. They started to mirror the same journey that I was having, right? We were learning together, we were growing together, we were breathing together, we were crying together at times, we were struggling together at times. And I started to build this community around me that inadvertently became an amazing foundation for where I am today, to be honest. And it is not a place that I ever thought I would be in today. And my Precision Point coaching business has taken a shift in the last 3.5, 4 years to be a high performance equestrian coaching. And I would not be able to be doing the high level of equestrian coaching with the biomechanics and the emotional control around mindfulness and self awareness in our horsemanship if I hadn't spent so much time within the human body
Yeah.
and really understanding the biomechanics of the human body. And so to answer your question of like what has kind of driven me through this, I would think it's a deep curiosity of self has really been what has driven me, and to not let life pull me off track. I kept my curiosity on my own healing, and really that little, I talk about it with a lot of my clients, that speck of the universe that hides behind the rib cage, the little sparkly part of us. I kept that very much alive. And I let that be my guide. Even if I didn't really agree with where it wanted to take me at times, I said, all right, we'll try this. And I have yet to look back at any of the decisions that I've made by following that sense of self, even if it didn't make sense in the moment, has rewarded me in ways that it's hard to even put language to the rewards that I get from seeing people rediscover themselves from within and rediscover whether it's in my biomechanics with people, whether it's in my life coaching, or now in these amazing equine human partnerships that have started to just blossom in a very, very a deep way of perspective, self-awareness, the passive leadership that comes from the deep self-awareness to me has been one of my biggest motivating factors, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, as I'm listening to you, so I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a advanced professional numerologist, and I really follow
Oh.
numerology as a language of energy, and how does like the cosmos speak through the numbers to us as our being. And I also
Mm.
absolutely, because I am kind of on the geeky side of things, I really am fascinated by the bridge between science and spirit and how we connect those two pieces. And as I hear you talking about the human biomechanics, in my mind, I'm hearing, okay, here's the science piece, and here's the human piece of our physical being, and also the mind piece of how do we have this neuroplasticity of how can we move and change as we want to get back to the who are we, which is the soul essence of who we are. And for the listeners who can't see, we actually have this on video recording. And as Katie's talking, she's got her hand right in our heart space. And she's speaking of the divine spark. And for those of you who know me, my personal belief system is we are all a divine spark of love from the universe. Therefore, we are all interconnected in some way. We are all one in some way, but we are all packaged very uniquely in our little humanness. And the big piece of our journey is how do we walk each other back home to our heart, the place that is our divine piece of love, our sparkliness. It is who we are. We just show up in a slightly different way. The other thing you said that I really love, 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 and I want to share with the listeners is what you describe in your last decade of moving through the difficulties that are presented to us, to our humanness, is for each time this wall or this speed bump shows up for us, do we choose to lean into the truth of who we are, which is, can I listen to that inner voice in my heart, in my being, which is really your higher self talking to you, which is really your soul saying, girlfriend, I got you, no worry? Or are we getting trapped in the, oh my God, what does this look like? What's it going to mean? How's it going to work? So, the prime
Mm.
example of you opened your studio 10 years ago to no consumers, no clients, no customers, not sure what was going to happen. Could it work? Couldn't it work? Couldn't really afford it, but you held on to three things: the awareness that you need to stay open and curious in order to move forward, the trust and the faith that you are being supported by something that isn't necessarily 3D physically. Can you put your hand on it? The knowledge and the awareness. The awareness is really the key to me. When we can become
Me too.
aware of where we are within ourselves, to hold the clarity of our vision, and literally, the methodology of quantum physics is that if you hold yourself in the vision as if it were your current reality, guess what? The waveform will collapse
Mm.
into the particulate form, and la da da da, it becomes your reality. It's
And
like
it
ding, ding,
usually
ding,
becomes
ding.
your reality. Right. And I've seen this over and over and over again because I use the same modality in all of my coaching. And of course, I don't ever ask any of my clients to do what I haven't done or can't do. I can't, do some of the physicality things as well as like my 12 and 13-year-olds can do that come through. But you will ask, if you ask for it from a place of deep self-awareness, right? Carl Jung, know thyself. Like if you can go in and ask from that deep knowing and spend time in the energy as if it's already present and sink into that, not only will the energy of the universe give you what you desire, it'll give it to you in a gift wrapped package in a way that you never could have believed, in the most beautiful way. In there, though, we also have to be aware that as the universe gifts you the things that you want, it's also gifting you a lesson within the beauty of what you've asked for. So sometimes as it comes, it can be so beauty. Can you behold the beauty without becoming blinded by the beauty of what you've asked for, but stay present in the lesson that's also embedded in it, right? In the middle of that, there's still a lesson for us then to rise to the next step. And I can,
Yes.
and I think that keeps us very grounded in that. I tell my clients a lot, us, and I work for some very high power clients. I said, if you're at the top of the mountain, you got to realize a couple of things. The view might be amazing, but there's less oxygen and you're probably tired from the climb, and it's important to go back down and get the nutrients from the river and get the berries from the trees. Like there's a reason that at the top of the mountain there's only room for one, and it's the small bushes and the bare rocks. Like take a look around and then turn around and go back down and help those that are behind you, which includes that piece of yourself that's still evolving, and that there's a lesson embedded even within your success, and not to let that success take you to a place that now becomes, this is kind of a trigger word in our culture, narcissistic, right? And that it's all about you. Well, yeah, it is all about you. You're right. But in a very beautiful, compassionate way. And that there's lessons embedded in, even when you get what you want, there's a lesson in that. And I've had it happen. It's so neat. It happens to me all the time. It's happening right now. I just opened up a new studio in downtown Concord, and it's like, I blow myself away. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really awesome. This is exactly what I wanted, but like a little better. But I see it with my clients. And I had a session with a girl yesterday who kind of blew me away. And I said, how are you doing? And, the last 8 months have been like, not good. I'm like, okay, where yesterday was like, she leans in and she goes, I'm so good. I'm like, yeah, you are. And it's not and she's very financially successful. She's professionally successful as these other things, right? And it's the knowing of thyself that you can feel to help exactly what you're saying, Mia. Like, let that be your lighthouse, let that draw you back to your center and trust in the next step, even if it's the step in front of you might be dark because the lighthouse can't always light up the path right in front of you. It's lighting what's coming,
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
it's a
really, really
beautiful
exciting.
analogy and it's so true. I mean, it's just so true that, and sometimes you just need to lean into the light that you receive from those you surround yourself with until you find your own lighthouse. And so I think some
Mm,
of where you help your clients is absolutely that. It's helping people who maybe don't recognize that they actually are their own lighthouse for themselves if they just return to
right,
that place within themselves. Sometimes we need a little help to have the path illuminated. And it's not necessarily like, let me give you every single point in your GPS back home, but it's let me shine the light on the path. As we all know, there's lots of paths that can take you to destination. But
right,
your example of the person who gets to the top of the climb, to the top of the mountain, to that top peak, well, you don't want it to be one and done and over because then, hello, what's next? I mean, if you've reached that pinnacle and that's what you think that's the end of the road, well, you've sort of closed yourself off to the myriad of amazingness that's sitting in front of you. You can take in so many different directions. So,
yeah,
even for myself, the other piece that I see in your personality that really mirrors a lot of how I feel I've gone through a lot of my journey is this resiliency piece. It's the piece that
hmm,
when the poo poo hits the fan and you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what's going to happen in the next moment or the next day or the next week and what's it going to be. It's the resiliency to know so deeply in your core that if you just hold to what feels true in your heart and follow those
right,
breadcrumbs, the rest of it will
right,
sort. The rest will come through. And you're absolutely right. Even while you're enjoying the accolades of, oh, hey, I think maybe I've reached this vision that I wanted, there's a lesson because that's our dharma. That's what we're really here for. Your soul decided, hey, man, I need to experience a few things, learn a few things, teach a few things. Oh, let me jump and be this human body for this particular blip of screen
right,
time, before the next. And that's the whole name of the game. I often
yeah.
say, like, I view my journey here on Earth, it's a little bit like a treasure hunt. It's a little bit like, I wonder what's
Yes,
around
I
the
look for
next
treasures every
corner,
day.
right? I wonder what big surprise might be showing up for me. And sometimes a surprise doesn't always equal like it's a great surprise, like, oh boy,
No,
wow, this is the
it does
best.
not.
No, but even within the surprises that sometimes you're like, yeah, wasn't really thinking it was going to show up like this. The lessons are
Yeah,
there to both give and to gain so that
yeah,
we become absolutely that interactive cog in the wheel of how do we all move and work with each other to get to that place of understanding, oh, this is why I'm really here. This is what I'm really here for.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
find it's fascinating, especially I'm really going to pick your brain a little bit moving into 2025 because for
Okay.
anybody who's into the whole numerology thing, moving into 2025 is an enormous year upcoming because it is both the ending and beginning of cycles. And I know that you're currently shifting into a new phase of your capacity to show up for people and help people. It
Yes.
is a window of time where, if you've laid some foundational groundwork, what is coming up in the next year is like, wow, it's the time to really get out there and shine
Mm,
and do your thing.
mm,
It requires all the traits that are associated with what you're describing. It requires
mm.
resiliency because there's going to be some roadblocks. It requires
Yeah,
faith and trust that it's going to pan out and maybe not in the way you think it is, but to be open to the fact that it doesn't have to look the way you think it has to look. It's going to require a little bit of consistency and dedication to the thing, which obviously you wouldn't get to where you are had you not had that, with the willingness to
right.
say, oh, if there's a little barrier in the road, I could go over it, around it, or through it. So I got some options here. That's all right. So
Hmm.
this upcoming 2025 is going to be really, really a big shifting transformational window of time for people. And I'm
Mm,
just curious, as a woman with many intentions, how do you see
mm.
yourself moving through the next year? If you could say, this is my this is how I would love to look back in December of 2025 and say, this is what I learned, and this is what I loved, and this was amazing, and
Yeah.
where's it going?
Yeah, Miel, you're so on point on so many issues. And we've always been kind of aligned in some of the spiritual stuff. And, I'm incredibly spiritual and I can sneak it in here and there into some of my work. And you are 100% correct that I set a yearly intention every year for myself personally. And a year ago in 2023, I sat down with myself and said, all right, Katie, this year is ending. There's some changes that are coming. And how do you want to approach the year? Which is exactly how I approach all of my clients. And some of them I have to break down into smaller timeframes because some people, there's lots of different things that go on with people. And there can be real traumatic things that happen. And we have to break it down because the weight of the world can be too much. And my intention for the year of 2024 was expansion. And this is an example of, be careful what you ask for. And so, sure enough, it might not, when you set these intentions, and I usually write myself a letter a year ahead in the future. So, what it looks like in the future with immense detail, exactly what I'm doing. Not so much detail in, I'm going to have, a blue bedspread on my new bed, but, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel that's happening around the goals that I set for myself in that year? So I set a real emotional environment that isn't even real yet, but I'm going to make it real within myself. And that what's called a life script. I do it for myself. I do it for my clients. And in that script, I read it, I listen to it, I record it on my phone, I listen to it when I'm driving, I listen to it when I fall asleep. So I'm literally brainwashing myself. I'm literally going in, like you spoke to earlier. I'm like checking in with my own neuroplasticity, and I'm spending, quality time with the person I want to be in the future. And I can tell you in a complete authentic way, sometimes that person scares me because she's really busy. She has a lot of responsibilities. She is required to show up for people in a very authentic way, which requires me to stay very true to myself. I'm not a big drinker. I don't do drugs. I exercise like crazy. I eat very healthily, which it can be a little annoying at times because, there's things that pull you in different directions. So last year I had been single for almost a year, and I decided I would jump back into the dating scene, and I wanted to expand into a long-term, legitimate new relationship. So I started that journey. I'm successfully coming into 8 months with my beloved new boyfriend who I adore, who's been, when it comes to numerology, we should chat because his presence in my life has changed multiple things just by his presence, just his presence, his energy coming into my energy has changed so many things in all kinds of different ways. So there was an expansion there. I ended up with a new studio. I ended up expanding deeply into my high performance equestrian coaching. That has taken off. I traveled the country nationally and teach on those levels. There's a children's book written about my program. There is all kinds of opportunities continuing in that arena coming forward. I'm working really hard to get into the universities to work with the young riders because by the time I catch up to these rider pairs in their 40s and 50s, that's fantastic. We can still get a lot done, but I'm trying to cast the net into a little bit of a younger mentality because I'm very, very motivated to really, if I'm going to be within the equestrian world, I really want to put a thumbprint in that our quality of presence really matters to these horses, to yourself. So I spend a lot of time doing what I teach. I don't just teach, I do what I teach. And that has helped me really get to where I am now. And so to answer your question, as I come into 2025, I have to say I'm a little bit like, okay, that worked. What's next? So as I come into what 2025 looks like, it is less of trying to, you know, use the hammer and the nail per se. It's more of continuing to let what I have expanded really begin to blossom is the way I'm looking at 2025. To let 2025 blossom to where now that aroma of what I have created is going to attract and draw in the people, the horses, the businesses that need the work that I'm offering. And so 2025 is for me going to be a year of continuing to blossom and grow. And in that, anytime we cultivate and grow and we set foundations in the blossoming, there's a set of, things have to be pruned out. Some things that worked before don't work as well. They're not as aligned. And that's all okay too, because that then in there lies where that part of the energy can go off and do what they need to do in a different way, where there's different farms that might have different ideas of how things need to be done, different partnerships that might need to change moving forward. And all of that is a blessing within itself if we can be open to the expansion to allow room for the blossoming. Like if you think about a seed coming up out of the soil, like it's a little messy, right? There's an expansion that has to happen. And as that expansion happens, to let the root come up. And through this expansion, when I was out, I teach out at the Owls of Shoals every year. We were talking about it gently, and we're there for 4 days and it's all intentional. And I picked a Rosa rugosa stem off one of the beautiful Rosa rugosa trees or bushes rather. And I brought it into the class and I found a wine glass and I stuck it in it. And it was not only the stem, it also had a couple little new green roots coming off the side, and there was some blossoms coming. And I think it's really important, Miel, as professionals, as clients, as family members, as partners, to recognize where you are within your own growth, to recognize, are you in the dirt? Are you the seed? Are you the stem? Are you the branch? Are you the blossom? Or are you in your full presentation of who you are? And if you think about just like the analogy of being on the mountain, or the analogy of the flower, being in its blooming state, it's temporary, right? There's an impertinence to all of it. And if we try to stay in that constant blossom, it, number one, gets exhausting. What's more important is you become rotten and you're in the way of the next blossom that's trying to come through. But there's sometimes a little bit of space in between those two things happening. So over the last year, it was me expanding in and having the courage to kind of step into a much bigger role in all aspects of the triad of my teaching, whether it's the body, the breath, or the mind, and all that comes in different ways, that to allow myself to come into the blossom again. And I have to be completely honest, it's super annoying when you find yourself back in the dirt and you have to, get burned down. And COVID burned me down in a lot of ways. And I had to re-blossom back up and in. So as I'm coming into 25, and I follow astrology and numerology a little bit myself, and the eclipse season has been real. Eclipse season has not messed around for me. It has been the dark night of the soul for me through this last year as well. As much success as I have had, it doesn't come without the work. And there's been a lot of work. I'm currently in a lot of work. And to allow the opening of what's coming to me and to be witness of that and to enjoy it and to share it with my clients. I had an open house last night at my studio for Midnight Merriment in downtown Concord, and I couldn't even fall asleep, because your cheeks get all red, and it means so much for people to come in and discover a path back to themselves. And that is one of the most amazing things. So how can I be teaching that to other people if I'm not actively involved in the own process myself
Yep.
as I've gone through this? So
So really,
2025 is going to be opening.
yes, so exciting. I mean, I think I when I hear you and I see you and I follow what you're up to, the word that comes through to me for you in 2025 is abundance. And I don't necessarily mean like financial abundance. I mean abundance of all of it. Abundance of growth, abundance of transformation, abundance of availability and spaciousness and adventures, and just, creating this environment of the people who connect with you and are attracted to what you bring, because the reality is everything is a reflection of everything else. Everything is a mirror of everything else,
Right,
including your description
right,
of your current partner. Yes, we can talk numerology and we can talk, charts and the whole nine yards, but it is absolutely because there is a reflection, there is a mirroring of one individual
Mm,
to another, one soul to another, of either what is working or what is not working. And through that mirroring, through that reflection, you have the opportunity to make a choice. You have a free will to make a choice of, do I want to follow this path or that path? Do I see what is being reflected to me so that I can make a decision? Does this work for myself? It's
right,
just, if we can step outside of our own self-imposed limitations of it needs to look like this or be like this or feel like
right.
this, whatever that thing is, it opens up the possibility, the capacity to show up in any number of ways. And
Yeah,
that's a piece of what I hear you say. I also hear you say when you're very wise, you're very, very wise in that you recognize sometimes you have opportunities, collaborations that are there for a window, but then they need to shift and change. And I think many of
right.
us like to hold on tight, like, I can't let go of the thing. And when one can't
Hmm.
let go of the thing, knowing that it's come to its fruition, it's come through its cycle, because that is what these repetitive life cycles that we experience are all about. It's about when something has reached its place of mm, its culmination of how it's meant to show up for you,
Right,
by releasing it to move on to something else, you've now opened up the space for the newness to come in. And
right.
I think a place where many people get a little tangled up moving through the world, and this makes me think about how you want to show up for younger equestrians as well as, us kind of old lady equestrians, um,
Oh, but
is
I love my 50, 60, 70 year olds. Don't get me wrong.
well, we come to the table with a lot, though. I will say that. So,
You are the best
our
students. The
40
younger
to
ones, I'm like,
60
get with the program.
equestrians, we're really excited because we really want to like learn all the things, and we want to get back to that deep connectivity that you can have with your horse. But we also
Yeah.
come into it honestly with a lifetime usually of acquired patterns, beliefs, and thoughts that get embedded not only in the heart and in the mind, but also in the body, physically in the body. And so
And you
then we
think you're
show
hiding
up
it until you
differently.
bring your horse out. Yeah,
Yeah.
you do. You walk out with your horse, and I'm like, okay, well, you didn't tell me about this, this, and this because your horse is giving you all the way.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think, that marriage of helping the human and seeing how it's reflected through their connection with their horse is an avenue that's very near and dear to my heart, truthfully. And
Sure.
I have some mutual acquaintances that I bet you would, the conversation would be amazing. But I
Mm.
also see there's a shift in how we're bringing up our younger riders. I didn't ride as a child. I started as an adult, but I have plenty of opportunity through a variety of barns that I've been at over the years. You see what used to be the typical old school way of bringing a kid through the barn, which is, your horse is ready, tacked up to go. Let's go. You got a 1 hour lesson
Right.
and it's all around, run the circles, do the
Right.
thing, as opposed to the shift that's now occurring is really teaching and bringing our youth, our equestrian youth, forward with, there's more to this than you're just sitting on your horse and doing the 4 foot
Oh
fence and there
my
you
gosh.
go.
Yeah, if we had like 7 hours, meow. And
Yes.
one of my goals in 2025 through this, sense of, opening to what is now in front of me is, and I've said this in all of my clinics recently, and we're kind of slowing down right now. I'm looking forward to 2025, is that I'm very, very motivated to not only bring the human back to the equation of the artistry of horsemanship, but to bring the sense of self and awareness. I want to, like, okay, humans cute. I want to go deeper into, what is the energetic essence of who you are. And that is in the equation already. It's that little exponent that you might not know is there that's actually throwing off the whole answer. So let's go in and really dial down into learning about, yeah, you have a biological body, you also have an energetic being, and we have to learn how those two things can coalesce within its own congruency so we can actually get to the point we're trying to get to through awareness of our HRV, through awareness of our emotional body, that emotional body is making the decision way before your physical body, and that emotional body is directly connected to the quality and the essence of your breath, how that breath is being received as a gift from the universe, and how we decide to allocate it within our body, especially our energetic system, is going to change our presence in the world. And when I'm very, very motivated also to keep the emotional body of these equine creatures sacred and not to let them get washed out into the world of horsemanship. We can still show, we can still have this amazing experience with them and do those things, but we have to put ourselves back in the equation in a very, very deep, energetic way if we want to continue. And I think there's a shift starting in the horse world. What I bring to the horse world is very unique at this point. Not a lot of people are doing it. And there's many women that leave my clinics and they say, there's a huge hug to their animals and they apologize. They just didn't know. And then they ask, why isn't anybody else doing this? And I said, oh, don't you worry, it's coming, right? Because the rigidity in the horse world, it just doesn't work anymore. And as you know, Miel, as our world is shifting and changing, just as we are mirroring ourselves, our Mother Earth is shifting and changing energetically constantly. And there's only so much she can handle or she's going to allow within the dissonance. And that includes the world of equestrianism. And I wouldn't be in the world of equestrianism if I wasn't doing what I'm doing from that deep energetic place of self-awareness and uniting the energetic body and the biological body together as one. And that spiritual essence is what runs it all. No matter what your belief system is, it comes from somewhere out there. It comes into us through our breath. It turns into a physical reaction, and then it goes back up into the universe. And so there's this beautiful circular energy to it that is the thread in that circular energy is our breath. And so the deeper quality of presence we have in our breath, the deeper quality of presence we have within being alive in this absolutely magnificent experience of being a human. And I'm as excited about it as I am right now every day. I am so
Right.
excited about being alive and being part of this and sharing just the extraordinary nature of who we are as individuals. And you are me and I am you. And so if we can really buckle down into that, it turns into an absolute blast to be alive. It doesn't
It
have to be a
does.
horrible
It
thing.
really does. And we'll kind of wrap it up here. So I know you've got a whole full day ahead of you, and as do I, moving horses, of course. But what's
Mm-hmm.
so fascinating is I really very much value and appreciate that you absolutely in this journey of connecting the humanness and the soul presence for folks is that you're not just like, oh, we're healing your your soul, your spirit, your this, your that. So when I talk a lot about we're all helping each other walk back home to who we are for whatever length of time we spend with another individual on that journey, it is not ignoring the fact that we're in a human body. And I think
Right.
that piece gets lost sometimes in conversation when you kind of chitter chatter in the healing circles and the energy circles and all the things as fun and fascinating as it is. Sometimes it's almost as if the conversation travels along with the complete omission that there's a human body involved in this. And here's the
Correct. Of
truth.
an amazing
We're a soul
being.
in a human body. You're not getting away without that. The day you get away without that is the day you leave Earth. So since you're
Right.
here, you might as well, it's sort of like trying to, operate your vehicle with no wheels. Well, that doesn't work very well. You got to have all the bits and pieces and parts in order for things to happen. So I love
Right.
that you really intertwine, connect, and weave the significance of addressing both the soul component and the human component because I think
Yeah.
many times one piece gets left on the table and then you don't get complete wholeness. You get a sense of well-being, but you don't get the whole well-being
Right. You
because
get
you've left
close
something on the
to it.
table. Yeah.
Yeah, and that something is vibrating to be acknowledged and be loved, right? It's all about love. It's all about
Yes.
everything in the world can be runs from love and can be fixed from love. And what's really fascinating is whether I'm with the coaching client, a biomechanics person in the studio doing Barre yoga, the cool thing about being with the horses is that they're just like us. They
Hmm.
have this amazing spiritual essence to them. And I'm going to say this very openly, they're above us a little bit. I'm just going to just be careful, they're above us, and we all have to accept that they're spiritually a little ahead of us, and that they also have a very similar mammalian nervous system. They have a fight or flight, they have HRV, they have feelings, they have memories, they have healing just like we do. And we have to start to let them be in the magnificence of what they are. And then they allow us to come through in a much more pure way. And I see it over and over again in the work that I do now. And I tell people all the time, I have the best job in the entire world. It's not even a job. It's my deep soul work. And it's incredible to be part of it and to bump into people like you, Miel, where like I can talk freely about all of it. And you very well can pick up what I'm putting down. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fabulous. It's really fabulous. And I don't think it's any mistake. I mean, I have to say I agree with you. I think our equine companions are light years and magnifications ahead of us as far as spirituality. If we take that just to put that aside and I know you're a heart math coach as well. And the
Yeah.
truth be
Yeah.
told, their electromagnetic resonance and field is so much greater than ours, and their capacity to feel into our heart spent electromagnetic field is so obvious that that is why that connection, that is why humans are drawn to horses. It is why we seek them out. The problem is we stop ourselves as we seek them out because then we think we
Yeah.
have to manage and control the whole show. And if we can just sit back and allow the flow and allow the conversation to really take place unfettered,
Right.
the volume of what can be learned is just phenomenal. It's endless.
Yeah.
So,
It is
yeah.
endless. And to make space for them, I'll make this really quick because we do need to wrap this up. But I'm in a teacher training. Like I said, it's just finishing in a month or two, and I'm going to miss it. And it's with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock through Berkeley. And Jack Cornfield is, way up there in the mindfulness world, as so is Tara, and they're just incredible containers of wisdom, and they're carrying these traditions forward. And I'm very interested, and I've loved the training, had a lot of success with it. And Jack told us a story a couple months ago in one of our Zoom calls, and he said he was in, I forget which country he was in. He was in a foreign country, and he was walking down. It was a more of a third world kind of country. And there was a young man walking down the street, and he looked very sad. And Jack stopped to him and said, are you okay? And the man looked at him with a kind of a sorrowful look on his face. And he goes, no, we are not okay. And Jack goes, that's interesting. You use the terminology, we are not okay. Who do you mean to speak of as we? And he goes, well, my mother is very ill, and she's the matriarch of our family. And if she is not well, we are all unwell. And I think that is a very, very powerful statement. And that it's not always about us, it's about us as a totality. And if we can start to learn how to heal our own heart, right? And this is where you and I are so aligned, right? Know thyself, go heal that own heart. Because if one of us is really unwell, we are unwell. If your
Mhm.
horse is unwell, and I'm not talking about a lame foot or a human broken arm, I'm talking about the imbalance in the heart space. If that is unwell in all of us, we have to be concerned that we're all somewhat unwell. And there is a deep motivation from my little corner of the world to model and create a sense of deep heart wellness moving forward for everybody that I get to be around, including myself and my children
Yeah.
and my clients and all of these things. That's what motivates me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And my phrase for it when people say, "So what do you do? And why do you want to do what you do?" And I always say, "Well, because I feel that if I can help people find their way to their heart in some way, then I'm shifting one heart at a time." And that's how it
Yeah.
starts. It's the ripple to the collective. I'm not going to shift 8 million hearts at one time, but I might shift
No,
one,
that's a
and that
lot
one
to
will
take
shift
on,
one,
Neil.
and then one, and then one, and it will spread because we are
And
one.
there's
We
a
are
reason.
connected.
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
a reason you and I and people like us do this work. And I understand that, like, there's things that have happened to us that have motivated our healing in a way that we may understand things from a place that others don't. And that's a badge and an honor that we wear. And I'm going to take those experiences that I have had that have been really hard and turn them into love, and maybe give somebody else love through me that I didn't get in certain situations, because that's part of my healing too. And I don't hide from that at all, you know.
No,
Yeah.
no, you can't.
Hmm.
And I think the capacity to take something that was difficult, our human has free will and choice to take it any old which way, and you can shift it however you choose. You can stay and wallow in the mud, or you can shift and
Mm.
move it out through love. So
Yeah.
energy is
Yeah.
not destructible; it's only transformational, and so you transmute what perhaps wasn't fabulous and bring it forward in a different way. I just love this talk, Katie. This
Yes,
is so good. It's too
I do
bad we
too.
it's
And
too
thank
bad we
you
have
for
to
doing.
stop because I'm like, oh, you know what? I could
I
just
know.
talk for a few more
Well, let's
hours.
let's chat again at some point. You should jump on my podcast
It'd
maybe
be a
at some point,
blast.
and we'll
So
talk about
tell
more
us,
stuff.
tell people, where do they find your
Yeah.
podcast? Where do they find you? How do they get
Yeah.
support? All the things.
Yeah, so I'm super available. I am on all the social media platforms. You can find me under Katie Behner, Behner. You can also find me at Pointe Barre through all the social Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can also find Precision Point Coaching on Instagram. You'll find that through Facebook as well. Pointe Barre Studios with an S.com for my fitness stuff, theprecisionpoint.com for all of my equestrian coaching, and all the links are on there. There are two podcasts that are out there. There's a Breathe to Ride podcast that has some really good episodes on it that I will be probably taking some from. And then the On Point podcast is out there as well, which I love to interview people and ask, like, how did they get to this point in their life? And that's a really cool podcast. And there's going to be a lot more episodes on that coming up in the future. And other than that, you can find me in my studio if you're lucky, 2 Phoenix Ave in downtown Concord, New Hampshire. It's a brand new studio. She's pretty spiffy. I'm in love with her. And I spend a lot of time in there with her. Her and I are getting very well acquainted. And stay tuned via Facebook and Instagram. I'm going to have all kinds of stuff coming up. The next event that's coming up, if you're local, you may be interested in, is a winter solstice celebration in the studio. We're going to be making some lanterns and having some meditations. Then we're going to do a lantern walk up to a local bakery that my best friend offers for some yummy treats for our winter solstice celebration that's coming. So if you're interested
Wow.
in any of them, look me up online. Pointebarstudios.com is really the best place, or theprecisionpoint.com to get started. And I would love to meet all of you. And if you have horses, I want to meet them too.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Katie, thank you for taking the time. Such a great talk. All right, gang, that's it. This episode is, I'm going to call it a wrap. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. And stay tuned because we're going to have another episode. And we're definitely, Katie and I are going to chat again for sure. So, with that, my
Bet.
friend, I will let you go. And listeners,
Thank you.
don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It's going to be great. Take care.